Hello, welcome back to More Designs. I'm Marielle, and today we're going to be making notebooks. We spent a lot of time making planners and calendars and things like that, and we're going to use those skills today and apply them to notebooks that we can use to organize your life. I use these from everything from planning these videos to teaching my son to cooking, you name it. The possibilities are endless. Make sure you take a minute to subscribe to my channel. Now, let's jump in. Alright, so I'm going to jump into Keynote like I usually do and just start with a clean slate. The first thing I'm going to do is adjust the size of my slide to reflect my planner. If you want to know how to figure out the perfect size for your planner, make sure you check out the video I'm linking here, and I also put the link in the description. But really it depends on your device as well as what orientation you're going to have your planner and what app you're going to use it in. So now that I know that it's a size that's going to work, I'm going to go in and build the aesthetic part of my planner. So I'm going to start by creating the look of it, and to do that I'm actually going to jump into my master slide, and this is going to save me a lot of time. So once I'm in my master slide, I'm just going to use this first slide, take out everything that's there, and I'm going to build out what the majority of my planner is going to look like. So I'm going to start by creating what would really be the back cover of my planner just by using a square. It starts as black, but then I'm going to go over to the color fill and choose a color that I like. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to give it some dimension by adding a drop shadow. And for me, when I'm looking at the covers, I like to add a lot more shadow to my covers compared to when I add my paper and my tabs in a little bit, which I'll show you. But usually I just play with the different settings till I like the way that it looks. Now that I have that done, I'm going to layer on top of this my paper. So again, I'm just grabbing that rectangle and I'm going to stretch it out to be just about the same size as what I've just created, but a little smaller. And this is because if you think about a planner, the paper is usually just slightly smaller than the cover. And for this, I'm going to turn it into white. And again, I'm going to add a shadow. Like I talked about before, I like to have a little bit less of a defined shadow, so I'm going to bring that opacity down. Once I like how the paper looks, one thing I like to do just to add a little bit more detail is actually add a second piece of paper on top of that. And to do that, I simply duplicate what I've already made and then just move it over 1 pixel or 2 to the left, and in order to move over something very slightly, you just use the arrow keys. Once I'm done with that, my next step is to add in my tabs. You don't need to worry about perfect spacing in terms of spacing things out from top to bottom, because I'm going to show you how you can align everything once you have in the correct number of tabs. And I'm creating a planner where the tabs are off to the right, but you can certainly do the same kind of concept with tabs at the top or both. That's totally up to you. Once I've made my first tab, I like to layer it in between the 2 sheets of paper I created. Again, hard to tell from a distance, it's just one of those fine-tuned details. I'm then going to space out one until I really like how it looks. Add a shadow. I like to make this one a little bit more drastic than my paper, but not as much as my planner. And then I'm simply going to duplicate it. And you can have all your tabs the same color, you can have all of them different, you can alternate, that is totally up to you. So I'm going to alternate between these 2 colors. So I'm just going to duplicate these 2. And I think I'm going to create 6 tabs total for the planner I'm going to be making. And you'll notice now that I've made the 6, they are not spaced out along the planner at all. And that is not what I want at all. I like to have it nice and even between the top and bottom. So once I have all 6 there, I'm simply going to select all of them by holding Shift and clicking on all 6 of them. And then I'm going to go over and hit Group. And that turns them into one object that you can stretch, and it'll change all the tabs uniformly. So I can stretch them out and then make sure they're centered along the page. Now that I see it, I'm going to bring that back planner page out just a little bit. So now I've got what my planner is going to look like for the majority of the pages. So I'm going to select Done, and you're going to notice that my screen has just turned to what I created. And what I'm going to do is go up here and add a page and add enough pages to have 1 page per section for now. And then I'm going to create a blank one right now that will eventually be my cover, and we're going to come back to that. So when I'm done, I'll have my cover plus 6 of these templates that we just created. And the reason I did that is we're going to go build in our links, and we're going to do it in our master slide, so we only have to do it one time. But in order to build in the links, you need the slide to exist to link it to. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to go back into Edit Master Slide. I'm going to click on that first tab. I'm going to right click, go to Add Link, select Slide, And down at the bottom you have the option to select slide, and it has all the slides that we just created. My first tab will be to slide 2, my second tab will then be to slide 3, and I'm just going to go down and add the link for all 6 of these. And once you put all these links into your master slide, you're not going to have to worry about adding links to every single page of your planner. Work smarter, not harder. And before I add any more to this, I do want to hop over and show you what it would be like if this was a notebook you purchased. I see a lot of people buying blank notebooks or lined notebooks or you name it on Etsy, and then not knowing what to do about those tabs because they want their tabs to be labeled, but they don't know how to get those labels onto the tabs. So I'm going to pretend that that's just what happened. So let's say this is a blank tab notebook that I purchased off Etsy. Unfortunately, when you do buy a notebook like that, it is much harder to label every tab. So I'm going to go in and actually just grab my pen, and of course you could type as well, and just for now I'm just going to call it section 1. Quick and dirty here just so you can see what I mean. So now I've labeled the first tab section 1, and the links are all there and they're all still working, but you'll notice when I go to these other sections that section 1 label is no longer there. It works, but it's no longer there. And that's because each one of these pages is different. So what you would need to do is you would need to label every single one of these tabs on every single page, which means if you have a notebook that's going to be 30 some odd pages, you're going to have to do this 30 some odd times. One way to make that slightly easier is let me just show you, if I label all 6 of my tabs, I can grab the lasso tool, circle all 6 of those tabs, and then I can select it, copy it, and go on to my next page and hit paste, and all the spacing is going to be there, so I just need to move them on top of the tab. So in theory I could do this for each one of the pages of my planner, which will save some time, and if I had used the text tool instead of handwriting I could do the same thing, but you can see why this takes quite a bit of time. It is possible to do if you're buying a blank planner, but for me I always prefer to make my planners because then I can label them on Keynotes and bring it right into my GoodNotes planner that way. So let's jump back to Keynote and finish up the planner we were making. So where we left off, I have all of my tabs, they're all linked, and I have a placeholder for my cover. So now I'm going to go in and add those labels to my tabs. So obviously this is where you can really start to make it what you want it to be. In my case, I'm actually working on a new planner to just brainstorm ideas for this YouTube channel because I find I keep coming up with more and more ideas as you guys ask questions, so that's wonderful. Please keep asking questions because I love making videos that you guys want to see. So I'm going to start by adding text, and this is what's going to go on that first tab, play around with the font, and then I'm going to go over to arrange and rotation, and depending on if you want the text facing out or in, you're either going to do 90 degrees or 270. I like the text facing in, that's just me. So right now this is too big, and actually I don't think I love this font, so I'm going to go back in and choose a different font. Once I like the font, the size, the color, I'm going to be able to duplicate it and label each tab whatever I want it to be labeled. And so this is really where you start making it your own notebook. And again, as I said before, you can certainly have more than 6 tabs, less than 6 tabs. It's really up to you. As I wrap up these labels, I actually realize I made a mistake because I'm making this harder to do than it needs to be because I have built it in my actual slide as opposed to my slide master. So I'm going to select each one of these labels by holding down Shift, and then I'm going to cut them and then jump back into my master slide and then paste them here. That way when I go back into my planner, all the tabs will have the labels on it. So again, working smarter, not harder. I don't know why I did not do that from the beginning. So now I'm going to create my front cover, and in this one I'm going to make a pretty basic front cover. To do that, I'm going to start by just copying that back cover that I had already placed on the rest of my slides. I'm going to paste it into that blank slide that we created in the beginning for our cover. And now to make it a little bit more than just a box, I'm going to add a line, kind of as that detail. If you think about a typical notebook that is bound, it has that crease for where you open it. So I'm just going to create a basic line, but then add a drastic shadow just to give it that look of this is where that spine break is. And actually, to make the line look a little less drastic, like a line and a little more like a crease, I'm going to bring that color down so it's not quite as prominent as black was. And then for this notebook, I'm going to add a little label square where I can put the title. And I'm actually going to pull those colors in that I had used on my tabs, just kind of make things go together. I'll add a little bit of shadow for definition, but really this is something that's on top of the cover, so it shouldn't have much of a shadow. And then just to make it a little fancier, I think I'll make a layered box for my title. So I'm going to duplicate it, make one that's slightly smaller, use that second tab color and put it on top of it. So this is a super basic cover. I have made much more decorative covers using Procreate. So here's some examples, and I'll show you in future videos how you can really marry together Keynote and Procreate to help make more decorative and elaborate covers as well as other decorations within your planners. So now I'm just going to add text to label my cover, and now we have a pretty simple cover. So now we've got our simple cover as well as our sections. So I'm still not done because I do think that part of having a notebook isn't just having blank paper. Sometimes I like to have lines, sometimes I like to have grids, sometimes I might want to have it blank, and I also want to have the option for adding lots of pages in the future. So my next step is going to be to actually come after this final section because I don't want to touch my sections yet. I want to keep my first page of each section kind of as is, but I do want to create some blank pages in the back that I can use for the future. So I'm going to quickly add, we'll say 3 extra pages back here. And each one of these I'm going to format a little bit differently. So I'm going to start by creating one that has a grid, and to do that I'm actually going to use the table feature. And I'm going to be adding columns and rows, but I'm just going to have to play around with it to find the exact number that I want. So I'm going to make this grid as tall as the paper and as wide as the paper, not the whole slide, because I just want it to be on the actual paper. And right now it's not going to look like a grid, it's going to look more like rectangles, and we're going to fix that in a minute. The point is to have it the size of the paper. Then you're going to go into table and adjust your rows and columns until they are squares. So in this case I need to add more rows because they're too long right now. So I'm going to keep adding rows until I have that grid look that I'm looking for. And now I've got a blank sheet with grid. So the next kind of template I want to make is just a lined piece of paper. So for this, I'm going to add text and then just use the underscore over and over and over again. Once I have a few, I'll copy and paste it until I can kind of fill the page. And it does take a little bit of formatting and finagling with. We're just about there. And I've also seen planners with lines but with a gap in the middle so that you could have kind of a 2-column setup. Really, this is the part where you start to customize. Whatever you want set up, you can. In fact, it doesn't have to be generic blank pages. What if I wanted to add kind of like a to-do list? So I'm going to create kind of a checklist to-do list setup just like that because it's something that meets the needs for me and my planner. And then I can format and have fun with it. And again, you can put words and decorations and everything on there. Just keep in mind that whatever you're creating on these blank pages are going to be pages that you're going to want to duplicate in the future. So if I'm always going to use this format as some sort of to-do list, then I can absolutely use the top row to label it and kind of have some fun with decorating it. Alright, now I've got another page that I can insert into my planner that's customized to what I'm going to need multiple sheets of in order to accomplish what I'm doing in my planner. So again, you really could do anything in this. It really depends on what you're using your planner for. Once we're done with that, it's time to export it. So just like I've done in the past, I'm going to export it as a PDF, and then using AirDrop, I'm going to plop it over to my iPad, but again, you can use email or Dropbox or Google Drive, whatever works for you to get a PDF from point A to point B. Alright, so now that we have our planner in here, I want to go over some different things about it, some ways to use it, as well as making sure we're making the best of those blank template pages that we created in the back of our planner. So right now, you'll see I've got all my tabs labeled, and then at the back, I have those different types of pages that we had set up. And you'll see all of our links are working, so I'm going to go to that first section, and just to get some content down, to have some visuals, I'm just going to take 2 seconds to quickly sketch out something. let's say the first page, I just want to list out the types of videos I might be making. And then if I somehow want another page between this content list and my future plans, I'm going to click on this little box icon up in the upper left hand corner. And then you're going to see all of the pages in your planner. But what I want to do is have one page in between what is essentially page 2 and page 3. So I'm going to look at the end, and this is why we put those blank ones at the end of our planner. And let's say I want to make this to-do list in between those pages. I'm going to click on this little arrow tab, click duplicate, and now you're going to see 2 of those pages. It's really important you duplicate so you always have a blank one in the back to pull from. And then I'm simply going to press it and drag and drop it to where I want it to be. And now, after this page that I just created, if I turn to the next page, I'll see that to-do list page right there. And this is not going to be the beginning of our next tab. So notice when I click on future plans, it's still going to jump to that blank template. And if I go back a page, there's the page I just inserted. So you can do this as many times as you want. You can duplicate and put in 100 pages between your first tab and your second tab and make that section as thick as you want it to be. So let's say I also want to add in a lined piece of paper. I'll go down to 10, hit duplicate, and then drag and drop it in. And I can put it before or after that page I just created. Regardless of where you put it, those links are embedded and it's not going to change your ability to flip from section to section. The only thing you need to be careful of is that your first pages of each section are intact and in place. But with that, you're going to be able to add as many pages as you want and make this notebook fit your needs. And you really can do whatever you want with this. Once you get a blank notebook set up, the sky is really the limit. Can't wait to see what you guys come up with. See you next time on More Designs.